just got back into modeling again now. I was model for quite some time, about 10 years ago. And then I went on to pursue other things. I'm also an actor and a singer. And I have my own entertainment company. And then when the pandemic hit, I started to retrain as a student nurse with a veterinary practice with animals. And of course, I'm on this interview today because I do have ADHD, along with some other medical problems as well. I also have autism, I have bipolar disorder, and I have fibromyalgia as well. So quite a mix. I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until 5 years ago. And I was diagnosed with autism when I got to college. So I went through a very difficult childhood, a very difficult school life, and it wasn't picked up on and until later on. But I think that's probably because when you're looking at neurodiverse people for a long time, especially in my childhood, I grew up in the 90s, it was thought that it was only boys that it affected and it didn't affect girls. So they weren't looking for the same markers. And then when they were looking for markers on these sorts of things, they was just completely different for boys versus girls. So yeah, I didn't get diagnosed until much later. I was 16 when I got diagnosed with autism, and then I was 25 when I got diagnosed with ADHD. So yeah, quite a long time period without any help.
Tell us about your school days then, and how these things.
When I was in junior school, I was fairly happy. I had one friend, and that was all I needed really. And I was really sort of forward thinking. I was very intelligent. I was the top of the class in all my subjects. Very nerdy, very happy being in school. But obviously I did suffer socially. I had one friend, but I didn't really manage to connect with other kids my age. And then once secondary school started, it was a whole different kettle of fish, and it all went downhill very, very quickly. All went down the pan, unfortunately. And I went from being the top of my class to being the bottom of my class. I obviously had no friends. I was bullied a lot. I didn't enjoy it at all. And then halfway through my secondary school experience, I moved to another school through a breakdown in my parents' marriage, thus moving away and such. So it then got worse, and then that's when I got to about the age of about 13, 14 when it really did go downhill. I stopped going to school entirely. When I was at school, I wasn't happy, and I was also the subject of some abuse as well that was going on at the time. And when you're neurodiverse and you don't really understand social cues or communication as well, things like that are more common, I think, and it's easier for kids that are neurodiverse to experience those problems. It's hard to know where ADHD stops and autism starts. They're sort of in the same sort of group of disabilities, and it's quite hard because they have similar symptoms as well. Of course, when I first got diagnosed with autism, when I was in college, I thought, oh, that's what it is. It's just that. But then as I got older, realized it wasn't just autism, because it was affecting things like how I was organizing. My memory was very bad. I couldn't focus on anything. And those sort of things sort of became apparent in my working life as I was older, and I wasn't able to hold down jobs as well as anybody else. And that wasn't anything to do with the communication side of things. It was my organizational skills, being no good with money, always being late to things. It just spiraled out of control, really.
So, I mean, from my experience, and I'm not a specialist with autism, but from my experience, it's mainly kind of reading social cues and understanding people's kind of expressions, and that's one of the major difficulties with autism, isn't it? Is communication. What other ways? Can you describe how it affects you?
The way I can describe it really is that you're on the same planet, but you're not moving in the same circles as other people. So it's almost like you're parallel to somebody else or to everyone else. Everyone else, you're all going in the same direction, but you're on a different track. And it's very difficult to sort of get onto other people's tracks and really understand them and know what's going on. So you sort of have to create your own tools as you get older to function in normal society. I wouldn't say I was severely bullied. It was more so it was teasing, it was taunting, it was, oh, she's a bit weird, she's, it was. And of course, no matter where you go, whatever school you go to, kids can be cruel, and if they see someone's different or they're weaker than the other children, then they will obviously say things, and it started off as just name calling and things like that, and then it sort of snowballed into things like I was getting sort of food thrown at me, um and I sort of stopped doing things like putting my hand up in class, and then obviously eventually I just stopped going to class entirely because I was just in a completely different world to everybody else, and no one really understood me and I didn't really understand them, and I just didn't want to be there, so I sort of gave up.
Mm. Yeah, and you didn't have any support from the school because of this.
No, so the first school I was in didn't give me any support at all. They were a very big school, 1,800 kids, and obviously things are limited. And of course, back then it just wasn't as popular as it is now to have, an SEN specialist in the schools, to have an actual mental health nurse, all these sorts of things. You had one nurse that you'd go to if you fell over and grazed your knee, and that was it really. And then my second school that I went to, by this point, I was now very depressed. I was self-harming. I was anorexic. I was dealing with abuse. There was a lot going on. I had one lady that was sort of like a part of an LSA team come down and speak to me, and I sort of kept everything inside. I didn't really want to talk to her, so there wasn't really much she could do because I wasn't giving out anything for her to then be able to help me, and there was nothing in place in that school for anybody with as complex needs as I had there and then at that time. So really, it just got sort of brushed over. One of my tutors had said to my parents, "Oh, she's suffering a little bit. She seems a bit depressed. Is there anything we can do to help?" And my mum didn't know what to do. My mum's actually an SEN nursery nurse. Um, so she did have experience with autistic children and children with disabilities. But of course, like I said, back then it was very different. There wasn't the same information about, you couldn't just go onto Google and, type in somebody's symptoms and figure out what was going on. So it was a lot more difficult. Fibromyalgia. So I only got diagnosed with that when I was about 28. I did have quite a lot of generalized chronic pain growing up as well. But it wasn't really something I ever worried about. It was just, oh, this is happening. And the physical pain thing, it was just, I just dealt with it. I still do. I just deal with it. It's just, oh, there it is. It's much harder to deal with mental health than it is to do with physical health, I find. But that's the funny thing. That's why I didn't believe that I had ADHD when I first got diagnosed, because I thought, well, I wasn't being disruptive in the class. I wasn't, running around. I wasn't unable to sit still. So I thought, well, I can't have this. It wasn't until I started researching all of the other symptoms that it became clear, okay, is this. There wasn't the typical markers for me. I wasn't difficult in class. I was very studious. I wanted to be there, and I did get distracted very easily. That quickly happens, and I find that if someone asks me a question, I sort of go off onto a tangent, and then I forget what the question was to begin with, which I might do a few times today. But no, it was mostly organization. I was always late, or I was either really early or really late. It was one or the other. I was never on time. And then yeah, I mean, I fidget a lot now, but I think that's because I don't feel like I have to mask any symptoms, or now that I'm sort of in my 30s and I'm happy and content, I just do my own thing, and I might randomly shout in the hallway for about 5 minutes just because I can, and my wife just puts up with it really. she she obviously knew that when I got diagnosed, she obviously knew that that was definitely correct, and she was saying, "Oh no, you I do think you do have ADHD." She works with kids and I work with kids, so um yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
How did it affect you?
I do have intrusive thoughts, but I don't really know how much of my mental health is affected by ADHD versus bipolar, because I've sort of have these three things combined. I don't really know where each disorder stops and starts, and how that meshes into my personality, and whether it is just my personality or whether it is these disorders. So I think I'm quite a complex case. I know that I had a lot of issue with mental health team in the NHS actually providing me any help, because they didn't know where to put me. They didn't know, you know, they didn't send me to the autism services. They didn't send me to learning disability services or anything like that. And then they also didn't want to send me just to the mental health team, because they said, no, we can't deal with this. This is too much. So I originally went to a mental health team when I was really depressed, and that's when I spoke to a doctor there who was actually a head of an ADHD unit that she was working on, and she just had me as a mental health case in general. And that's when she was like, hold on, I see what's going on here. So yeah, it's quite difficult to sort of I feel like it's almost like it's just all combined. I can't do a lot of things that other people can do, like silly things like telling the time on a 12-hour clock, or being able to sit down for an hour without getting up and fidgeting, or being able to go downstairs to just pop to the shop, and you know, even if it's just 3 things on my list that I need to get, I can't go into that shop and get those 3 things without having to keep rereading my list, because they're so distracting. There's so much going on. There's the harsh lights, there's the people around you, the smells, the sights, everything. All the stuff in the shops is all over the place, and if it's a different shop, you don't know where everything is, and it's quite overwhelming. I find I get overwhelmed very easily, so I have to just do one thing at a time, one job, and that's it. So like, for example, at work at the moment, I'm working as a student nurse at a veterinary practice with animals. And so I have a notepad with me at all times. And if somebody asks me to get something or do something, I just have that written down. That's my one thing. And the main problem I got in trouble with work a lot of times was my priorities. I'm trying to figure out what's more important than other things. And having never worked in the medical field at all before, that was all very overwhelming. But I do really love that job. I love animals. They're definitely far more exciting than working with people.
A lot of people who have a disability of any kind, they do have difficulty getting employment. Did you find that? Was it difficult to get employment?
Yeah. Well, not so much getting a job, because if I was on a bipolar high and I went into an interview, they'd think, "Oh my God, she's amazing. Wow, she's so dynamic. She wants to do this, that, da da da." Not realizing that I'm on an absolute mental high, and I'm just, you know, and that's not me healthy. That was me on a mental high, and doing things like interviews got me really excited, and I'd be like, "Yes, let's go," and that would trigger it, and I'd get the job straight away, no problems. I've never not gotten a job other than one, which was acting for Disney on the cruise lines. I didn't get that, but that's because I was too short. That's a completely different thing. So I would get every job I go for, and I would probably last about 3 weeks. The first 3 weeks, yep, everything's good. I'm learning new things. Obviously, everybody has to learn new things on a new job or a new career, so it does take time for that to slot in. But then it gets to the point where the things they're teaching me are not slotting into place, and I'm still making mistakes, and it continues, and it starts to snowball, and it gets worse and worse until eventually I have to find another job, because I know they're going to get rid of me if I don't find another job. I've never been fired as yet, fingers crossed. But I know when they're coming to the end of their tether, and I think, right, I've got to get out of here before they get rid of me. So I've sort of always been one step of the game, thinking like, right, I must make sure if things are going badly, you know, I'm getting a disciplinary, oh shit, here we go. I'm going to have to now go and get a new job, reapply, and do it all over again. So I've just been going through that phase, going through the motion over and over and over. A new job, a new career. Like, I've done so many different careers as well, because I just thought, oh, I need a fresh start. I can't deal with this. Realizing that I'm actually running away from myself, not running away from the job. So I just kept trying new things. But fortunately, this job, I've had it for 2 years now. I've been there for 2 years, and I have had disciplinaries, and I have been in lots of trouble, but they're still like sort of happy with me, and they know that my heart's in the right place and I am working hard. I'm just wired differently, and unfortunately I'm in a job now where they appreciate that, they understand that, and they do give me support, which is really, really good.
That's great news. That's good to hear, actually. It's good to hear that the employer really
Mm.
supports you. So when you say in the past, I just thought you must have a really brilliant CV, actually, with all these jobs you've had. Enormous CV. But I'm just thinking, if in the past jobs where you have had to leave, what is there a kind of common thread? What is the major thing that happens that makes it very difficult for you to continue in the job?
I would be making silly mistakes over and over, and then I'd also get overwhelmed. I'd turn up late or I'd turn up too early. The jobs I'm doing, I'm flitting from one thing to another. So, I think, right, I've got this one job to do. I go and try to do that job, and then something distracts me and I go off and do something else. And then whilst I'm doing that, then something else distracts me. And before you know it, a full day shift has gone through and I've hardly done anything I was meant to be doing. Um, so I think some employers would say that I was lazy, which obviously wasn't the case. They didn't realize that the ADHD was the issue. Um, and then some employers would say, "Oh no, she's working really, really hard, but she's just on another planet." And it's just nothing really connected for me. Which is why eventually I did set up my own company, because I thought, well, if I set up my own company, I can just do what I need to do and do it well. And it's been running for 10 years now and it is doing well, which is lovely. But it's more of a passive income, because when I did do it full time, it was too overwhelming for me. I thought, oh, I can't do this. So now I like to have little channels of different incomes all at once, because then if I fail or I falter in them, it's only sort of like a third of my income I've got to worry about at any one time. And a lot of people I know that do also have ADHD are the same as me. Um, so I run a children's entertainment company that's based on providing character entertainment and interpretive ways of using imaginative play and things like that at birthday parties, school visits, all that sort of thing. And I've been doing that for 10 years. But one of my friends, Leanne, who's wonderful, she also has ADHD and also has the same company as me. We both run the same, basically do the same thing. And we connected because I moved from Portsmouth to London and she moved from London to Portsmouth around about the same time. We swapped clients, but we're both as nutty as each other. And it's actually really worked out quite well, because all of her clients have gone to me and all of my clients have gone to her, and it's worked out very well. And she's the same as me. She does the same thing with the character entertainment and the kids and everything, but she's also an opera singer and she's also a wig maker, and so she's got a few different lines of work that she does as well.
People like Stephen Fry has raised the awareness of bipolar
Yes.
illness. And do you find it helpful when if people like Stephen Fry talk about it, it gets born, because there is a kind of stigma attached to these things, isn't there?
I think when I was growing up, it was very much, that's a person that's crazy. That's a person that's shouting in the street and they're violent and they're being locked up under sections. And that's what people's opinion of people with mental health or that people that were neurodiverse were. It was just, oh, that's scary and dangerous. Don't go near that. But then, I remember when Stephen Fry released his documentary about bipolar, and it was sort of like good that people could see that actually people with disabilities or illnesses or being neurodiverse, whatever it may be, doesn't mean that they can't be intelligent as well. Because a lot of us are. I mean, I'm mediocre intelligent, I'm not brilliantly intelligent, but I'm enough to get by, and the people like Stephen Fry, who are just absolutely fantastic, so intelligent, so on the ball, saying, "Oh, hey, I have this disorder. This is what it's like." It's really refreshing for people like us to see that, and also then it means that if you say to someone, "Oh, I've got bipolar disorder," now they just go, "Oh, right, okay, that's it. Oh, okay." Or how does it affect you? Yeah, cool. That's it. Job done. You don't have to sit there and explain that you're not a crazy person for 10 minutes.
What sort of strategies and what sort of coping mechanisms that you may have adopted, maybe in primary school or secondary school?
I was in my own little world. I'd just go off and pretend to be a horse, whatever it might be. I'd be like, "Oh, okay, I'm struggling right now," or I liked to play on my own. I didn't want to be around friends because it was too difficult to play a game with friends, because I wouldn't understand the rules that are just inherent in various games, and I wouldn't understand those rules. Or sometimes I would understand the purpose of the rules, but wonder what the point of them was. And I couldn't really connect with other kids. So I'd just go off and play in my own little world. And like I said, sometimes I'd pretend to be a horse, or I'd pretend to be a cat, or I'd have various sort of games that I'd play with myself, rather than with anybody else. And I'd be singing to myself. I'd be making my own little dance routines up. I'd be playing with my toys and things, and that was very much my outlet. And definitely art was another way as well. I was very artistic. I was always into paints and drawing and modeling and all these different things that I could do. And I would spend every weekend, half term, summer holiday with my granny, and she taught me to oil paint. And I remember taking those oil paintings into school because my mum was so proud of them. She said, "Oh my God, these are brilliant! Take them in school." And I took them to school, and the teacher said, "Don't lie, you didn't do that. An adult did that." And I was like, "No, no, I really did." And she was like, "No, no, you didn't do that." And then all the kids picked on me, saying that I didn't do those oil paintings, and I wasn't that good. But I really was quite a savant with paints. I was very, very good. I was painting to the level of, I'd probably say, an 18-year-old by the time I was about 5, and I was so, so good with these paints. Um, it just took a few lessons from my gran, and that was it. And I was off doing all these paintings, and I really loved it. And I found that when I was a kid, if I really liked something, I really, really liked something. It wasn't like, oh, I like, I don't know, for example, oh, I like painting because it's a nice release, it's enjoyable. It was, I like painting because I like everything about painting. I love the feel of the paintbrushes, I love the smell of the paint, I love drawing something. I'm hyper focused on everything. Which is another reason I didn't really get on with other kids in school when I was very young, because other kids would go, "Oh yeah, that's cool, whatever," and then they'd go off do something else. But I was very much like, "This is what I like." When I was in secondary school, I was picked on a lot because I was the guinea pig girl, because I rescued guinea pigs and I knew everything there was to know about guinea pigs. I could tell you anything, the Latin name for guinea pigs, what they eat, how they live, where they come from, all these things that most people would just go, "Oh, guinea pigs are nice. Oh yeah, I like them because they're fluffy." Whereas I would just have this abundance of knowledge about this one particular subject, and nobody wanted to hear about it. They just think, "Oh God, there goes the crazy guinea pig girl again. She's talking about, don't talk to her about guinea pigs. She won't stop." So it was very much that.
That's amazing. Do you have any particular role models that have been helpful? People to look up to and inspire you.
Say definitely my gran, because we had a really, really close relationship. And she taught me everything I needed to know, really. We had so much fun every summer. We'd go and play poo sticks in the river. We'd do the painting. We'd go out for long walks. It was always just such an amazing time with her, and she never let on that I was different. I don't think she probably wouldn't even have thought I was different. She'd just go, "Oh, that's just Becca. That's just, that's how she is." So she was definitely my hero all throughout my life. She was amazing. She sadly passed away just before I started veterinary work. So she was turning 80 in the January, and then she passed away by the August. But she went through cancer 4 or 5 times in her life. She went into remission even when it was meant to be terminal. Like, she just kept on fighting and fighting and fighting. And she sacrificed a lot for our family. She sacrificed a lot of her own wants and needs just to keep everybody else happy. So she was definitely my one proper role model that I really looked up to. In regards to like celebrities and things like that, don't really have any. I don't know them, so I don't really care for them as such. I sort of think, oh, I like this music, I like this band, but I I'm not really interested in them as a person, because they don't really post about themselves on social media or anything like that. You don't really see it. But I'm just interested. For example, my favorite band is Slipknot, and I find their music is just so raw and crazy, and I love it. It's so theatrical. It's brilliant. Um, and I could tell you all the lyrics for every single song. And when I'm in my happy place and I'm listening to that music, nothing else matters. I'm in a great space. But as far as celebrities go, like, I'm not interested in the band members themselves. I don't know what they do at the weekends. I don't know what they're into. I just know that they make this amazing music, and I'm really interested in that. So I don't really have any role models that are actual people.
Hmm. Um, how about medication? What medication has helped you, say, with ADHD or so
So
on?
I'm on quetiapine, which is an antipsychotic, which is good for bipolar disorder. Um, but I also think that that does also help with ADHD and autism and all the other things. Um, because it's one, obviously it's an antipsychotic, so it helps with intrusive thoughts and things like that. I don't have as many hallucinations. I don't see things I shouldn't see. I don't hear things I shouldn't hear as often, or at least I don't. It doesn't affect me because beforehand, when I wasn't on it, I would have these crazy hallucinations of these things happening, and whoever I would be with at the time would be like, "That's not happening right now." Like, what's going on? Whereas now maybe I would have a hallucination, but it would be a normal thing, so nobody would really pick up on it. Um, that's definitely helped a
Mm.
lot. It's also like calmed me down a lot because I'm a little bit too crazy and a bit too hyper without it. It's also helped my eating disorder because I had really bad anorexia, and it was the only thing I could control at the time was how I was eating. And typing makes you insanely hungry all the time. You never feel full. Whereas before, hunger pains didn't bother me at all, and I would go days and days. At one point, I went 2 weeks without eating a single thing. And that again, another thing that the NHS didn't really pick up on when I was a kid. But now, if I miss one dose of quetiapine, I can't eat at all. But once I take it, it's like boom, I'm hungry, I got to eat, and I'm just eating and eating and eating. So that has helped with that as well. It's helped with sleep patterns because with ADHD, your mind's going all over the place. You can't sleep, you can't focus. Right, I need to go to bed now. You just can't. Whereas with this, it also sends you to sleep, which is good. And then I've got citalopram, which is an antidepressant. I don't know how much of it works and how much doesn't. I just know that the combination of the two works really well. But then I also have to have other drugs like lansoprazole because it's tough on the stomach. And another thing that's interesting is I don't know whether this is for all people, but for me and some of my friends that have autism and ADHD, it affects your stomach as well. Like I have really bad irritable bowel disease. Certain foods really set me off, and I've seen a few studies where they have looked into the idea that people with autistic spectrum disorders and other neurodiverse conditions also suffer with that. So I don't know how interlinked that is, but obviously having the lansoprazole also helps with that. But it is quite interesting that it seems to be affecting the physical side of you as well as the mental side. But when I first started modeling, I would say so I did modeling as a kid, just normal, boring stuff, dresses, whatever. And I did like competitions, like for example, I did things like Miss Pears, competition, which is a soap company. There was like these little pageants that I would do where you'd work for things like Elizabeth Duke at Argos, like little things. I did that, and then as a teenager, I got into it again, and this was around the era of MySpace being a big thing, and AOL chat and things like that. There wasn't really a proper social media following when I started it. But it was definitely alternative modeling because I was into the alternative clothing. I used to love it, go up to Camden, pick out all the crazy outfits and I think that's because I was into metal music as well. That sort of was the same thing really. People that liked metal music usually would be wearing the black with the studs and the chains, and you'd do your hair how you wanted to do your hair, have tattoos, piercings, all these things. And I started doing professional modeling work and getting paid for it for these alternative shoots with little alternative companies that were popping up everywhere. I started to sort of wind down my modeling career just as Instagram started to take off. So really the second generation of social media that sort of started. And back then you were good at modeling if you were a good model. It had nothing to do with how many followers or how many likes or which products you were promoting. You were either a good model or a bad model, and that was it. And I felt that I fell into the category of good model. I was good at what I was doing. I was good at selling the products. I was good at producing looks sort of time after time, creating new looks, new makeup, new this, new that. And obviously now it's very, very different. I've only been back into the modeling world for all of a few weeks, and already I'm overwhelmed by the idea that it's all about
Oh.
how many followers you have. It's very different.
What's the best thing about modeling that you like, and how does it help you with your difficulties?
Creative outlet, really good creative outlet. I think of something so wonderful and fantastical. Oh, let's create it, let's make it a real thing, and we can capture it in that photo. And that's it for me. It's just such a brilliant outlet.